Hey Will, I'm looking to play some arcade games. What do you got for me?
Why don't you play some Atari games with me?
I don't know, man. I've played so much Atari lately. I'm looking for something new.
Well, what else is there? Atari has the best arcade games.
Hey guys, I've got arcade classics on the PlayStation.
Whoa!
Asteroids is one of the first arcade games in the golden age of gaming. The premise of Asteroids is simple. Control your ship and try to destroy all the asteroids on the screen. It quickly became a major hit during this period, and as such, it would make sense that it would get remastered and re-released time and again. I still remember loading a version of it onto my TI-83 calculator, and playing it while I was supposed to be paying attention in algebra. Whoops. It was one of the many games that Atari remastered when the PS1 came out. The premise stayed mostly the same, while the presentation got a major upgrade. Of all the games we covered, I'd say it's probably the most faithful to the original. The controls take a little bit to get used to, but once you get a hang of controlling the ship, it's a lot of fun. Your goal is still to wipe everything off the screen and clear the level. When you finish the level, you are teleported to another sector of space, but I'm starting to think that their teleporter is broken because each level looks exactly the same. To bring it into the modern age, there are more than just asteroids for you to shoot now. There's spaceships that will try to attack you, mining rigs, asteroids that shoot off like comets, and crystal asteroids, which regenerate. The crystal asteroids are the most annoying part of this game, but also the most unique. When you shoot them, they splinter off like normal asteroids, but can grow back to normal size with enough time passing. And then they splinter off into more and more, and it can get chaotic pretty quickly. But when you manage to clear a screen of them, it feels really satisfying. New to this version of the game is power-ups. There are a ton of different colored power-ups that you can collect, including mines, missiles, a laser, and my personal favorite, Armageddon. When you use Armageddon, you spin and shoot off in every direction. But as it always goes with power-ups, some are better than others. Once you get far enough, you unlock a playable version of the original arcade game, which still holds up pretty well. Being able to experience both games on one disc is a pretty great package. I'd definitely pick this one up if you can find it, because it sets the bar pretty high for the rest of the games.
When I was young, I was a fan of block-breaking games like Arkanoid and Alleyway. Turns out the first of these games was Breakout, and I had played a decent bit of it on one of the Atari plug-and-play systems that was released in the early 2000s. It is a simple and easy-to-learn genre, and I love finding new block-breaking games. It turns out there was another Breakout game that came out on the PlayStation 1, and I never knew it was a thing until recently. Is it a hidden gem, or is it shovelware? Well, we'll see. So in the late 90s, Atari was sold to Hasbro Interactive, who wanted to remake a bunch of the older Atari classics and recreate the glory days by making new and improved versions of these games. Breakout was no exception, and thus is how we ended up with a rectangle with eyes. Yep, it's as ridiculous as it looks. Is this the best they could do? This is so weird and couldn't imagine any kid even being remotely interested in this. These graphics are extremely underwhelming for PlayStation 1. I mean, I know the arcade version isn't anything to write home about, but for a game that was released on the same console and same year as Final Fantasy IX, it's embarrassing. The stage selection feels random as well. I've been in a prison, pyramid, and on a farm, and all I gotta say is that it totally looks like the developers were smoking something that day. A game like this is dependent on good controls, so let's look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good. This game supports analog sticks. That's great! The bad. If you have a PS1 controller with no analog sticks, then the D-pad is considerably worse. The ugly. There is lag with the control, so you have to plan your moves in advance, and is very annoying. Many times I think the paddle's gonna hit the ball and I end up barely missing and start raging. I don't want to, but let's talk about the sound. Listen to this game's Navi. Yeah, let's mute this game and pick your own soundtrack on your phone.
What about now? It's time to rock with the biggity bop bumper. What about now? It's time to rock with the biggity bop.
The Atari brand isn't what it used to be, and by remaking this game and adding polygons, that's not gonna win back the fans. However, I can see the appeal of this for people longing for an era of simpler gaming. For me though, it's not a game I'll be revisiting anytime soon.
Bump to the boot, to the boot, to the boot, boot, bump to the bass, to the bass, bass, bump to the boot, to the boot, to the boot, bump to the bass, to the bass, bass.
Following the popular trend in science fiction-based arcade games, 1980 saw the release of Missile Command. This game is relatively simple. It involves you shooting missiles to stop other missiles from bombing your cities. The following year, a port for the Atari 2600 was released, which gave the game even more popularity at home. In 1999, Hasbro Interactive released a 3D remake of Missile Command, developed by Meyer Glass Interactive. Much like the other arcade remakes of this era, Missile Command has a huge graphical overhaul to bring this classic to modern consoles at the time. This version has two game modes, Classic and Ultimate. The Classic mode has all that you would expect. You defend cities on various planets from incoming invaders by controlling your crosshair and timing your shots with great accuracy. The Ultimate mode is much more distinct, as you defend real-life cities on Earth in a 3D setting. These look alright by today's standards, and do add some fun cutscenes that serve as the game's narrative. I especially like the explosive scene that plays in Ultimate mode when you lose, probably because I watched it more than the others. The art in Classic mode is quite nice, with detailed backgrounds and fluid motions for your turrets and your missiles. The controls are fine too, but moving the cursor with the D-pad feels a little stiff. In 3D mode, the graphics are fine, but you can tell it looks dated with its age. Throughout Ultimate mode, you can eventually purchase missile upgrades that make them hit harder and zoom faster, which you do by spending the points you get. It's a nice touch, but this game feels more like an updated port more so than a reimagining. There isn't too much that really adds to make core gameplay more interesting besides just a fresh coat of paint. Missile Command was developed by Meyer Glass Interactive, a company which has changed names quite a few times throughout its history. The studio has also worked on notable titles like the Mech Assault games on the original Xbox and the Fear series. Most recently, they were acquired by Wargaming, the developers behind the World of Tanks franchise. Ultimately, Missile Command still plays as you would expect. The option for two modes is nice, yet the gameplay is relatively the same. Part of me wishes that this game pushed the envelope a bit more to make it more unique than the original, but I'm sure its intention was more so just to create an updated experience of Missile Command for home console consumers. I personally figure that I would probably get the same level of enjoyment from the Atari version at the end of the day.
Frogger was another beloved arcade quarter horse. Since it's considered to be such a classic, I had really high hopes for this game. Unfortunately, they weren't met this time. Everyone knows the basic premise of Frogger. Why did the frog cross the road? Because there's 5 slots on the other side that need to be filled. The premise of this remaster is the same, with the first available level being the familiar level that everyone remembers. There are other levels as well though, such as a pond, a factory, and up in the clouds. Each level has different stages, which you unlock after clearing the previous one. These add different goals and obstacles to try to vary the gameplay. You can play any level from the start, but the various stages must be unlocked. The other levels have different goals and a lot of varied paths, which is great in concept, but it's a bit difficult to pick up right away and figure out where you need to go. It requires a lot of trial and error, and in a game like this, I would prefer to have less trial and error since there is a time limit, and especially considering in the original, you can see the whole level at all times, so you know where to go and how to get there. Of all the levels, I really did like the factory though. It has great visuals and is overall just a very fun level with unique paths and goals. But on the flip side, whoever designed the pond level should never work in this industry again. One of the biggest flaws of the game is one of its biggest features as well. You need different power-ups in order to get through certain levels, but that isn't really well explained, and the power-ups aren't anything to write home about. The experience is made worse by clunky controls. Even the beginning level, which I know pretty much like the back of my hand, was really difficult to get through because I was struggling to figure out how to control Frogger. I kept feeling like there was a lot of latency with my button presses, so I wound up switching to a CRT, but that still didn't help. There is a lot that is great in concept here, and with some more polish, this really could have been a great game. And I am curious to see how later 3D Frogger games play, because they're probably a decent experience with this as a basis. If you are a fan of classic Frogger, however, I would stick to that one, because this was a big disappointment.
The original game, the granddaddy of all video games. When you think of the birth of video games, no other title comes to mind than Pong. Heck, I'm sure that cavemen played Pongs with sticks and stones. Therefore, it was a no-brainer for Atari to milk out the popularity of Pong, and Pong was on everything from arcades to home consoles. Some may say this was the Pong age of gaming. I mean, how much better could video games get? Turns out they can get much better. Nonetheless, Pong laid the foundations for video games as an industry. Much like Breakout, Pong was another IP that Atari wanted to recreate the popularity it had during the 70s. How do you take Pong and make it appeal to the youth? Well, it seems like the Atari approach is to just throw anything at the wall and hope something sticks. There seems to be quite a variety of stages to play, and I gotta say, there's a decent amount that I was interested in playing. It even has the original Pong if you're so inclined to play that. There is one thing that pains me to say about this game, but the sole reason I can't recommend this is that it has horrible controls. This is the hardest thing in the show, and unlike Breakout, Pong has no analog controls. You are stuck with D-pad only, and it feels like you're playing a game on a laggy TV. With the level of precision you need in these kind of games, Pong is an exercise in frustration. It felt like Breakout's level of imprecision ramped up a notch. It is so annoying to play against the CPU as it gets to move fluidly, whereas I'm hoping not to mistime my button presses and let the ball go past me. The main issue is that with a D-pad, the paddle moves in set intervals and lacks how smooth an analog or paddle controller can be. I recently found a Pong plug-and-play at Walmart and I had a bunch of fun with a friend. I can see Pong the next level being fun as a drinking game, but even then I'd inevitably get annoyed with the controls. This game has so much potential, but I can't recommend it. Just stick to the original.
Space Invaders is one of the most prominent arcade games and a huge game for popularizing the shoot-'em-up genre. In 1999, Activision decided to make a remake of the original formula from the ground up for home consoles, and they really hit it out of the park with this one. Space Invaders was released for the PlayStation, Nintendo 64, Game Boy Color, and PC, and I'm playing the PS1 version here. This version completely revamps the game and adds a lot of really awesome features. Most prominent are the graphics and design, as it's a large improvement with 3D models and animations. It was the first home console version of Space Invaders to feature 3D graphics, and it still looks great today. The structure of the game is a lot more modern as well, with a loose story, cutscenes, levels, passwords, and a detailed power-up system. Each level takes you to a different planet in the galaxy where you fight waves of aliens with core gameplay just like the original. Since this was released in '99, we get Pluto as a planet. Hooray! But since there are only 8 stages in the game, they left out Mercury. I guess they wanted an even number of levels, or because you basically fight your way closer and closer to Earth throughout the game, I'm not really sure. Sorry, Mercury. The defining gimmick of the game is how the power-ups work. If you destroy 4 aliens of the same color as noted in your gauge on the left-hand side of your screen, you get to unleash a special shot to do more damage. Things like missiles that keep going left and right, vertical missiles, diagonal shots, the list goes on. Each planet contains a new type of alien that can give more types of special shots. It almost adds a strategic approach to Space Invaders as you try to pick and choose what power-ups you need to finish the level quickly. Motherships are also present too, which can drop additional bonuses like shields and time stop items. At the end of each stage, you get to fight a unique boss, which are super fun to fight. This game has a lot of polish in its presentation, and that's what sticks out to me the most. The cutscenes at the time just amazed me growing up, and I always loved how the loading screen between levels gave you a little mission briefing on what the next enemy would look like that you would fight. Space Invaders also has a completely original soundtrack here, which isn't out of this world per se, but it's a nice touch. And you can even play this game with a second player, and that adds way more replayability. Space Invaders was developed by Z-Axis, which was owned by Activision before being shut down in 2010. They mainly made the occasional BMX or sports game here and there, with Space Invaders being their most unique title. A lot of heart was put into this game, and I absolutely love the amount of detail and content. This game can be finished in a few hours, honestly, if you're good enough, but the ride there is just as fun. Of the various arcade remakes of this era, Space Invaders to me is the best one.
Man, I love remade classics. I hope they do it again in the future. Who are you?
I have come from the year 4000 to tell you they have remade classic games. Here in my pocket, I have Tempest 4000.
Whoa, can I play it?
What year is it?
It's 2020.
It is not time.
Aww. Wait, why do you look like the Terminator?
Everyone looks like this in the future. Have you not seen the Terminator?